the phone line say was now recording. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. You will be getting a recording of this presentation afterwards in a follow-up email that you'll be receiving from Kimbia Marketing. You will be on mute during the webinar, but please feel free to ask us questions using the question module of your GoToWebinar. We will try to stop along the way if they're relevant to a specific slide we're on, or we'll also have time at the end. Also, the question module is great. If you're having any trouble hearing us or seeing anything, please raise your hand or ask us a question. And Kelly, who will be helping me monitor those, will let us know that we need to pause or have a question. Also, throughout the webinar, if you hear us say something that you find particularly interesting or relevant, please feel free to tweet it to the hashtag Kimbia webinars. You can see that on this introduction slide here, and it will be throughout the deck. So with that bit of housekeeping, we're going to get started here today. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be doing the 21+1 tips for a successful crowdfunding event. We're going to go through all the tips and talk to you guys about why they're great, what folks should be thinking about. Obviously, these are general things that we've learned our best practices along the way. Consider how your organization may benefit from these, how your organization might use these in your own special way to support your mission and your crowdfunding event. And always keep in mind that this is a really fast evolving industry. So things that we know now may be slightly different in a couple of months, but they're a great place to start. So with that, hi, I'm Miriam Kagan. I'm a senior fundraising principal here at Kimbia. I've been with Kimbia just about 3 years now, I think. I have a pretty long background in all things fundraising, having started in direct mail and then meandered my way into online fundraising, and now I primarily focus on crowdfunding days. So if you have questions along the way about what this might look like in terms of your overall, fundraising program, how crowdfunding events can fit into it, our contact information will be at the end of this deck. Feel free to reach out to us if you have a personal question of some kind about this. You can also tweet me at Miriam Kagan. So for those that may be saying that's all great, we're going to get all these tips, but what are crowdfunding events exactly? We're going to talk about larger crowdfunding events that are driven by the organization. So I want to clarify that because there's certainly a lot of crowdfunding events out there where you go to a third-party platform. Kelly decides that she wants to have a birthday party. She starts a little event and says, instead of gifts, I want everybody to donate to my favorite organization. That organization has no idea that Kelly is doing this. It's not under the organization's branding or umbrella, and then all of a sudden the organization gets a check. That is not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here are crowdfunding events that are managed by the organization, that are started by the organization, and that enable their participants, whether you're a foundation and your participants are nonprofits, whether you're a large nonprofit and all of your participants are your constituents, a higher education institution and all of your participants are your units, but that kind of crowdfunding event. Why crowdfunding? Because it's here to stay. We've seen, that this is not just a fad. The types of crowdfunding keeps growing. The amount of money raised by crowdfunding keeps growing. There was a study done by Forbes a couple of years ago that showed that there was over $5 billion in funds raised through various crowdfunding platforms that year. That included commercial endeavors, so for my personal food truck. But they said that about a third of that went to social causes, and this was a couple of years ago. So that's well over $1 billion through crowdfunding events for social causes. We also see that we have that really high value prize of new donors, up to 60%. We all know that new donors are who we want on our file. We are constantly losing donors from various channels. There's this regular attrition. The rate of donors growing can really change. And what we find is that with crowdfunding events, they regularly get in the 20 to 35%, as high as 60% of new donors giving to the event. So as we say to ourselves, where are we going to get new donors from? How are we going to reach those new constituencies? We're finding that crowdfunding events are a really great source for that. Also, they engage major donors. So crowdfunding events, as we found, really speak to the entire pyramid of the donor funnel. From your smaller donors, to your major donors, to your corporate partners, everyone has something to become excited about and a reason to participate. And of course, sustainability. This isn't a one-off. It can be repeatable, it can be manageable and growable. Do crowdfunding events lead to more giving? You know, so is it just the fact that we are moving money around? A lot of people say, hey, maybe there's cannibalization. Are we just robbing Peter to pay Paul? That's not true, and the reason that's not true is because we find that the demographics that they appeal to aren't just the traditional demographics of both online and offline donors. They appeal to all levels of the donor demographic pyramid, and if you'd like to see more information on that, we did a wonderful study overlaying hundreds of thousands of crowdfunding donors to find out who they are. You can reach out to us, and we'll send you information for how to get that. Also, there's the long tail effect where we do find that folks who have maybe already given you a gift say, hey, this is really exciting. This is a wonderful thing that people are doing. I'm going to give another gift. And as I said, we see pretty high numbers of new donors coming in. That's why this isn't purely a robbing Peter to pay Paul scenario, because we're seeing double-digit percentages of new donors, folks you otherwise wouldn't have had. Also, we have seen clients and organizations that have had crowdfunding events for 5, 6, 7 years in a row. They would not be having those events every single year if what they found was that, you know, it was just moving money around from one campaign to another. Here's an example of a wonderful large crowdfunding event that's shown significant growth year over year and shown some very good results. So those kinds of things that we're talking about, they're sustainable, there's new donor numbers. This is Give Local America. I think some of you may have heard of it. It's the nation's largest single-day crowdfunding event. It was started in 2014 here by Kimbia. The first year, $53 million were raised. Now keep in mind, this isn't just online. Giving events aren't single channel. We'll talk about that. While there may be a hub online, it's folks giving from offline, over the phone, email, social media. So the first year was $53 million. Second year, it grew to almost $69 million. And as you can see, that didn't just come from, you know, a couple more people coming in there and saying, I'm going to give you $20 million. The average donation stayed the same. It was the number of gifts that went up, and importantly, the number of people engaged on mobile. We'll talk about that in a little bit. A couple of examples of other events. I mentioned higher education here earlier and how giving crowdfunding events can really be a great way to raise funds in a new way for, you know, traditional institutions and nonprofits. Purdue this year raised $13.7 million, and that was an 87% increase from the year before. You might say, wow, that is a huge jump. How did that happen? Well, for most folks, the first year is the learning year. It's establishing the baseline, figuring out what kind of crowdfunding event works for you. And once you figure that out, the second year you can really roll up your sleeves and say, I'm going to do this, you know, really well and do all sorts of fun things. Columbia raised almost $13 million, and Cornell, in its first year, raised almost $7. So again, we're talking really big money here. From the Community Foundation side, one of the folks that's been in this game the longest, the Community Foundation of North Texas, their giving day this year raised $33 million in its 7th year, and again, 26% of donations came from first-time donors. So all the nonprofits that are participating with that are really getting that great boost of new donors that they can now cultivate throughout the year for second gifts, that they can now cultivate to say, do you know somebody that might care about us the way you do? Let's talk, tell us who they are. Would you like to hold your own fundraiser? Would you like to donate your birthday money? All these things they now have, and look at your, you know, what I like to do is look at people's programs and say, hey, which of your other channels where you're raising funds has a, you know, percentage growth rate of 26% new donors? I'd be willing to bet not a lot. So, how do we make this happen? How do you have a successful day like this, and what are some of the things to talk about, to think about? And this is where the 21 plus 1, so really 22 tips come in. The first thing to do is to plan. As with any fundraising fundraising or marketing campaign, it is important to keep in mind that this is not a you will build it and they will come activity. It's not enough to just have the donation page and the microsite and a pretty design. Just as with any successful campaign, there needs to be a lot of marketing that needs to happen and outreach and thinking about who are you going to talk to and how are you going to talk to them. So with crowdfunding events, it's important to do the same. And that all starts with planning. So first, you want to create a project plan. I'm not going to read all these slides to you other than to say it's important to have somebody who is responsible for this project and the lead. This may not be their only job description. We all know that we are idea rich and resource poor as many nonprofits, but you definitely want somebody that owns this from an execution perspective and is responsible for herding all the cats, for knowing when things are due and making sure that those things that are due actually happen. Once you start the planning process, you really want to choose a crowdfunding model that will work best for you. This is an example of some of the crowdfunding models. There are other options out there. A lot of folks might want to use a chapter or affiliate model if you're a national organization that has local chapters. This is also the case, for example, for community foundations where there's the community foundation umbrella and there's many participating nonprofits. This is also the model that many higher education institutions use. So, you are the University of Texas, but you're going to have a competition between the law school and the business school and the School of Fine Arts. So that's more of a chapter affiliate model. You may also have a project mission model where maybe you say to yourself, hey, you know what, we are not federated, we don't have any chapters, we don't care, we're just going to have all funds go towards one cause. That's okay. You might say to yourselves, I'm really worried that if we have chapter or affiliates, then there would be a designated fund issue or revenue sharing issue. That's all right. You can still do fundraising, you can still have a competitive element by mission or project. So maybe you are a healthcare organization and you do a variety of things like provide money for research to cure disease, provide education to patients about how they can live with the disease, and also you provide education to caretakers about how they can help their loved ones. You don't have to designate those funds, but you can create a fun competitive element by saying, which one of these do you care about the most? Or creating special power hours by each of those mission areas. So again, these are just examples of models that folks commonly use, but as I said, think about ways that this could work for you and your organization. It's also important to pick a date. And there's a variety of considerations that you want to take in mind when picking a date. Is there a major milestone, like an anniversary? Maybe this is the day that you opened your first homeless shelter. Or maybe this is, World Puppy Day, and you are an organization that cares about puppies. Maybe this is a quiet fundraising time of the year for you. Maybe in May, things kind of slow down and you don't have a lot going on and you're not going to trample on the toes of other programs. Maybe that's a great time. Maybe you're launching a capital campaign. Maybe you have an annual fund campaign that you'd like to culminate in a big giving day. Giving Tuesday has been pretty successful for a lot of folks. Last year, I think we had, Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but 5 or 6 clients that had crowdfunding campaigns going on Giving Tuesday. So think about what will work for your organization. If you just want to pick a day and say, hey, we think May looks good, but we don't know what we're going to do, we don't really have a reason to, that's where you have a strategic discussion about how you make that valuable. And we will note a little bit of that later. Define your audience. So again, this is some of the kind of, fundraising and marketing fundamentals 101, but decide who are going to be the audiences that you need to reach out to. Do you need to talk to your major donors to get some incentive funds from them, or maybe to have a VIP pre-giving event so they can feel special? Do you want to really try to get first-time donors? Does that mean you have a big file of folks that have traditionally followed you but not given to you, folks on Facebook, maybe some lapsed folks offline that you really want to get, and also influencers. These are people that maybe are your volunteers or people on social media that are your maybe celebrity supporters that may not give money to your crowdfunding event, but these are folks that you could really turn into I like to call them sneezers, but folks that will spread your message and recruit others and really influence folks to participate and give money to your crowdfunding event. I was referring to this a couple of minutes ago and saying if you're going to do something in May, for example, but you don't know why, this is where your compelling value proposition comes in. It's not enough to just say, hey, we are an organization that saves puppies. We're going to ask you for money this May. Please give us some. What you need to be able to answer is, as an organization that saves puppies, that probably asks folks for money pretty regularly, why this date in May is it important? So why you, why today, and why right now? And there are key elements of success around crowdfunding events that go into creating that message. But it's important that you really figure out the sense of urgency for folks to give to you to the crowdfunding event. In a lot of cases, it's the incentive. So, you have to give to us right now because we have this really special incentive and your money can go further. Or the chapter can win extra money. Or there is a really special prize pool of things that they can win. So that's why you need to do it today. Or because this is when we're going to kick off the campaign for the new puppy shelter. And if we don't make enough money, no puppy shelter. But it's really important to create that extra why beyond just we are the organization that helps puppies, and there's always a good reason to give to that. Here's an example of a value proposition of a relatively small organization that had a great value proposition, explained who they were and why they were important, and raised a lot of money when they participated in the larger Giving Day, which is Give Local America. I'm not going to read this all to you guys, but again, if you have questions about this, feel free to reach out to us afterwards. We can help talk you through that. Strategic promotion, so you built your plan, you figured out what kind of Giving Day you're going to have, when you're going to have it, and why you're having it. And now is the time to say, well, now that we figured all that out, we need to get the word out there to folks. How are we going to do that? You need to plan for that before, you go up with your site that's live, and then you say, oh no, we have no plans for how we're going to target people. So you have to figure out where your audiences are, how you're going to reach them, what time of day, for example, you're going to reach them, with what vehicle, and how you're going to monitor and measure how that's working. So it's not good to send an email 6 weeks in advance of the event, not check how it did, then send an email on event day and realize that no one opened that email you sent 6 weeks ago, no one read it, nobody knew this event day was coming, and so you didn't get any traffic on event day, and now you're wondering why didn't anything work. So it's really important that you have a plan to actively monitor and measure how things are going and adjust if needed. Get creative with the ways you communicate. These crowdfunding events get really energized. People get really excited. The great thing about them is that they're so multi-channel and folks can really, spread the word about them in so many different ways that you also don't have to just kind of constrain yourself to the traditional channels of, what we might now think of the traditional three, which is offline, email, and social media. There are all sorts of fun ways to get your volunteers involved, to see if you have resources in your area that might be willing to support you, like a radio spot, or maybe go in the morning news and talk about this wonderful event you're having. And corporate sponsors, I think this, while this is the last bullet point on here, it's really important. Corporations, large and small, are increasingly looking to really put a better, to become more involved as social corporate citizens, and to be really seen as being parts of their community and to doing good work. So this is a great opportunity for you to come to them and say, hey, provide us some incentive money for this wonderful event that we're having, we'll feature you, we'll talk about you, you will get a lot of good press as a wonderful corporate socially responsible citizen, and this is a way to bring them into the fold. I've mentioned this a little bit, that explicit measurable goals. When a lot of folks get started with these, they say, well, we have no idea how much money we're going to raise, how do we put a budget to this. There are other ways to set goals when you may not know what to measure yourselves against, and also to make sure it's realistic. Again, if you have questions about this, feel free to reach out to us. We can help work through how organizations do this in their first year. You want to recruit online ambassadors. So one of the ways that crowdfunding events work, right, is through the crowd. It's because the crowd gets engaged and excited. And one of the best ways to do that is to recruit folks that are going to start the buzz. So we've already said consider recruiting board member staff and volunteers. Make sure that you give them the tools they need to really energize the crowd. I might be a board member. I might say this is really exciting. I'm happy to post on Facebook, but I have no idea what to say. Not my cup of tea. If you hand them a Facebook post and you say this is exactly what you need to say on Facebook, they'll be glad to do that. And if you keep them going and telling them, hey, this is how we're doing, this is how things are coming along, you have impacted things this much, they're going to get energized and they're going to be excited. I've also referred to briefly, but we're going to talk a little bit more here about the incentive structure. It's really important to have that to make people feel like by giving to you on that day, they're going to make an impact either to your overall organization or to the specific chapter and affiliate that they really care about. For example, I graduated from the Georgetown School of Foreign Service, so maybe I want to know that if I give money to my school, it will beat out the business school, or my school will get an extra prize, and I can see that, and I can feel a little competitive. I can say, hey, those business school folks always look down on us foreign service folks, but we're going to out-donate them on this giving day, and we're going to show them who's boss. So think about how those things might work for you, and there's some examples here of creative ways to structure prizes. Also make sure that you're customizing messages. This is again fundraising fundamentals 101, but think about your audiences and who you're targeting. It's not a one-size-fits-all. If you're able to ask them for different amounts based on their recency and frequency and giving level, channel preferences, if you know that I'm always, sending you a check via direct mail, I've never opened an email, I'm never going to, send me a postcard that says, hey, you can call in if you don't want to spend the money on processing my response device. There's all sorts of ways to track this, but make sure you plan for that in advance because you really don't want to leave folks out who could give to you and would be excited, but you may be leaving them out because you're closing yourself off to only one or two channels. So that's the planning part, the things you need to figure out before you get going. Once you've figured all that out, you also need the right technology. And again, we're going to talk here about large crowdfunding events that are organization sponsored. We're not talking about, oh, I want to send all my folks who want to have a birthday party to a third-party platform that's really easy, where they can just, set up an individual page, and I'm not going to help them at all. They can just do whatever they want. We're talking about something more guided that engages the crowd and that the organization participates with the crowd in. So from a technology perspective, it's important to think about your platform and to take things into consideration. I'm not going to read you this list, but a couple of things on here I think are really important. Does your platform protect your brand? So, when I go to that crowdfunding event, do I see you? Do I see MiriamPuppies.org and all about the puppies? Or is your name somewhere on there, but mostly I see that it's sponsored by another platform provider? That's really important for crowdfunding events so that your donors don't get confused. Are you going to get access to your donor data immediately? Do you own it? It's a really important question to ask that a lot of organizations don't think to, is what will happen with your donor data? Will it be shared? Is it yours, or do you have to ask for it? Can you do whatever you want with it or not? Also, how easy is the platform itself to use? How easy is it for me to give a donation as a donor when I'm ready? How easy is it for me to share that donation? Can I embed the donation form on my own personal blog? All of these things, is it mobile friendly? I think we saw a couple of slides ago that last year for Give Local America, for example, 20% of visitors came from a mobile device. I just did a crowdfunding event with a client where 45% of their visitors were on a mobile device, and we're regularly seeing those kinds of numbers. These things are time limited. For most folks, they're on a weekday, so you know that people are at work or running from the office to lunch, and they might be on their phone or their tablet. If you are not mobile responsive, people are going to get frustrated, and they're going to give up, and they're not going to give to you, and you're going to leave a lot of money on the table. I've kind of talked about all of these things, some of the technology. So just think about that and make sure that you also consider the volume considerations, that you consider the flexibility and the scalability. If you're going to be expecting a much larger volume on one day than you usually get, can you handle it? Can you trust that the platform won't go down? If you've involved all of your chapters and affiliates, then the volume might be much higher than usual because maybe usually they're fundraising on their own site. Make sure that you've taken into consideration the platform's ability to handle that kind of volume. Make sure that from a technology perspective, you have communications and social media training, that you've figured out how all of that works, how you're going to get the word out, how you're going to post, what tools you might need to stream, to stream social media, to track social media, to schedule posts on social media, if you're using social media, and how you're going to communicate if you need to get, say, press releases out there. This all takes tools and technology, and it's important to figure that out ahead of time. On event day, so we've planned, right? We figured out how we're going to plan this thing. We've put together a marketing plan and put the word out there. We've picked the technology. We've put it in place. Everything's working fine. Event day is here, and now we got to make sure that on event day things flow smoothly. So first of all, make sure you have an event day headquarters. And what we mean by that is that you have staff who know that they are available on event day. They have some dedicated space that they're going to be if they don't work from home. And that they know that on that day they have responsibility. There might be questions from folks. There always are. No matter how nice your site is and how easy it is to use, there will always be somebody calling. Even the media might be calling to say, wow, we noticed you're doing this in our community. Can we talk to you? Make sure that you are able to communicate in real time to say this is how much money we've raised or this is how things are going. And all of that requires a central place where folks can gather and know where to go and look. Also make sure that you have plans and are planning to live tweet, live post on Facebook, spread the word on social media about how things are going. For example, if you have prizes that are happening during power hours, if you've just awarded a certain amount, if somebody's just called in and said, wow, I love what you're doing, I'm just giving you $10,000, or just progress, wow, we just hit $50,000, this is so exciting, that you're sharing that constantly. The one thing that we really urge folks to think about is using tracking codes to measure effectiveness. If you are using Facebook, but you did not code anything, and so people are just clicking, all you're going to see is that somebody came from Facebook, but not from what kind of post, especially if you bought ads or things like that. So think about that ahead of time, and make sure you can track things. I've mentioned real-time updates. It's really important to show people progress, especially if there's any sort of competitive element. So your platform should be tracking all your online donations, regardless of channel, live. There shouldn't be a delay by channel, by affiliate, by chapter, by unit, if you have that. It's not just by your overall fundraising goal. You should also be able to really easily add gifts if you need to from offline and anything else that comes in as quickly as possible. So when you're talking to a potential technology provider, do ask them how you would do that. Can you do it right there? Will it update immediately? You don't want to have to add in, say, all your offline gifts 3 days later and only then be able to share the total. A lot of folks have in-person events. There's a ton of fun things that people have done. This list might look so weird to you guys because people have gotten really creative in spreading the word about their events. You see here one of the fun things in the picture that the fun folks at Notre Dame did for their day. You also see ideas here like river parade, farmers market. This is because all of these have been used as places to help spread the word and hold an event to promote the online giving day. Also leverage peer-to-peer communications. Ask folks to raise money on your behalf. Ask folks to spread the word on your behalf. Hey, Kelly, guess what? I just gave to this event. Wouldn't you want to, right? Make sure that it's not just you saying give, 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 but that all those ambassadors that you recruited earlier on your giving day are being also encouraged to spread the word on your behalf. We can talk about awesome ways to do that if you're interested again. So you've had a super successful event. You've raised a ton of money. You've engaged a ton of constituents. You've got 50% new donors. Your boss is really happy. Everyone's super happy. But you're not done because there is still post-event. So first of all, for post-event, please say thank you. Folks have done some really nice stuff for you. A lot of folks have worked hard to raise you a lot of money on your behalf. to get folks engaged and interested, it's really important to say thanks. So here you see, and to say thanks, by the way, on all the channels that you use. If you just send a thank you email, but you had a ton of folks spreading the word for you on Facebook, and you didn't say thanks there, then all those folks are going to feel left out. So here's, excuse me, here's an example of saying thank you on Twitter. This is an organization that raised, as you can see, $2,500 during Give Local America, and they made sure that they had a thank you message. Enable post-event giving. There are folks that maybe weren't able to give to you on your giving day or during your crowdfunding event, if it was a couple of days even. They were really excited to give to you, something just happened, or maybe they had no idea this was going on. I didn't know this was happening. Kelly came along and said, wow, I participated in this really cool thing the other day, gave a bunch of money to this organization that I love. I go and look up the crowdfunding day site. It says it's closed, and I say, oh no. Have a link right there that says, here's how you can still give, so that I don't have to go search for it myself, because that creates an element of friction that is likely to make, maybe I'll get distracted. Things might happen I may not give. So make sure that you enable that in a variety of ways for the stragglers or for the folks that still want to give. Celebrate. You did a great job. This probably took some work and effort. You might have had to herd a few cats. You maybe stayed up for 18 hours during your crowdfunding event, staring at the total and watching the money roll in. So make sure to pat yourself on the back, pat all those who helped you on the back and say thank you. But then importantly, make sure you plan for next year. This is the +1. Why should you do this right away? Because this is when things are fresh in your mind. This is when you document all the things that along the way you thought, oh man, I wish we'd done that, but I just thought of it and it's too late. Or here are the things that we really should have done a little bit better, like for example, add tracking codes to all of our emails so we could see how they performed. Write that all down, have a post-mortem. Even if you don't get to your real event planning for another 6 months, this is the time to get the crew together that was really involved in this and write everything down and write down the plans of what would make your event better next year. So with that, those are the tips. A little bit about Kimbia. I've been talking a lot about crowdfunding events, and I've been mentioning that we do this, we do that. But if you're curious to hear a little bit more about us, we are an all-in-one solution that provides online fundraising, event registration, peer-to-peer, and DIY giving days, as I've been mentioning, and custom forms. We've been around since 2007, founded in Austin, Texas, helped thousands of nonprofits with a variety of their fundraising needs. These are some of the best of breed elements that we have. A couple of things I really like to point out on this slide. One is that we are mobile ready and responsive. All of our forms come mobile ready and responsive. You don't need web APIs. If your page is mobile friendly, we're mobile friendly. We're also secure. We have the highest level of PCI compliance. So even if your page isn't secure, our form will be, because of our patented technology using widgets. And also, for those of you that might have chapters, affiliates, or sister organizations in other countries, multi-currency and multi-language. So not only can we accept euros, but the entire donation form can be auf Deutsch, if that's needed for you. So with that, I'm going to move on to Q&A. The next step is that you can get the full list of these tips in a downloadable ebook, which you will receive in a follow-up email from our marketing department, including a link to this recorded presentation if you'd like to share it with somebody or review it later. Our contact information, we mentioned Kimbia.com. I'm really easy, Miriam at Kimbia.com or at Miriam Kagan. I'm going to pause and see if we have any questions along the way. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today. We have a question here from Mike asking how much time it takes to set up a crowdfunding event. The platform itself doesn't take very long, but you should really get started. Your marketing should start about 6 weeks ahead of your event, which means that you probably need to get planning at least a couple of months beforehand. So you can certainly you can certainly, put up the technology and design it in a couple of weeks, but really to have a very successful event that's thought through and leverages all your channels, you need a couple of months lead time. Okay, well, it looks like those are all the questions we have, which means either you guys knew all these answers already, or I did a really good job reviewing everything. But if you get any more questions along the way, you're thinking about this tomorrow, or just the next day, or if you have specific questions about anything I've mentioned along the way, specific to your organization, want to get in contact with us, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be sure to get back to you. So thanks again for joining us today, everybody, and with that, I'm going to end this webinar.